Hey everyone, now that February is over and we have rolled our calendars over to March, it is time to wrap up all of my reading for the month of February, and I had a fantastic reading month this past month. I finished 10 different books, 3 of which were novellas, and 3 more were barely novel length, but I'm going to count them anyway. I also finished 1 book on the first of the month, so I actually read 99% of it in January, but I'm going to count it here nonetheless. I have some notes over here so I don't lose my place, and let's get into it. I started off really strong this month with Boy's Life by Robert McCannon. I finished this, like I said, on the first of the month, and I actually gave it 5 stars, which is rare for me. I have mentioned that I don't give out 5 stars very often, and I'm really hard to give a 5-star, but this one got it from me. It was great. I really liked it. This book follows the adventures of Corey and involve a car crash into a lake, and that's really where the story gets started. I don't want to say too much, I don't want to spoil anything, but you've got a great coming of age tale. You've got the whimsy of being a kid. That's something that really resonated with me throughout this book, just that Robert McCannon was really able to capture that joyful feeling of being a kid really well throughout this book. It also definitely pulls at your heartstrings. There are a couple different moments in this book that had me a little teary-eyed. I don't want to say too much, like I said, but this book also gets compared to It by Stephen King pretty often, and I have read It as well, and I can definitely see the comparisons. I understand why people make them. I definitely think they're both worth reading, and you should read both. But personally, I do put this over It on my personal list. Yeah, like I said, 5 stars, a great read, definitely recommend. After the high that was Boy's Life, I wanted something that was a little bit shorter, and so I continued on with my journey of The Expanse, and I read Strange Dogs by the combo author James S.A. Corey. This got 3 stars from me, which is pretty normal when it comes to these novellas. Since they're not a full fleshed out story, I normally don't give them much higher than a 3-star. Every now and again, I get one that I think is a 4-star. As far as novellas go. But this one, I don't want to say too much because it's so short, but it definitely does involve some strange dogs. I always think the Expanse novellas are worth the read. They really expand upon the world. You take that wider view of what's going on away from the main crew and some of the ripple effects that are happening out there in the universe. And after that, I jumped to the world of James Bond, and I've been reading through the James Bond series over the past year or so. And this past month, I read Goldfinger by Ian Fleming. This is book 7 of the original Ian Fleming run. I really enjoyed this one. This one follows the villain Goldfinger, who is, to say more or less, obsessed with gold. I've always liked the James Bond books. I remember watching the movies as a kid, and that's kind of what spurred me into wanting to read them once I found out they were books. I got them all on sale on Audible for like a couple dollars each. I think some were even 99 cents. So I picked them all up at once. So I've got I think it's 14 originals by Ian Fleming that I plan on working through. These books just click with me. They're a good palate cleanser. They're definitely not for everyone. There's definitely some problematic, to say the least, material inside of them. But if you can compartmentalize that and deal with it, I think it's a good spy mystery thriller that just kind of have a certain suave to it. I don't really have a better word than that, but I recommend them. If you can kind of, like I said, compartmentalize the problematic aspects of some of these books. I think there's also some revisions coming. I think I just read that there's going to be a new release of the original 14 by Ian Fleming, and they're going to try and deal with some of the problematic material in it. So maybe if you're somewhat interested, but you want to try to avoid some of that, you can look into that run. After my little break from fantasy there, I moved on to the Well of Ascension by the one and only Brandon Sanderson. I'm very late to this trilogy. I have this as my second favorite of the trilogy. I also read The Hero of Ages, which I'll get to later in this. That's the last book I read this month. and I really enjoyed it. I did think it had a little bit of middle book syndrome. I don't know how everyone else feels about Era 1. For me, this was definitely a good entry. You get a little bit more of the world, you get characters growing up, but definitely not my favorite. It's really close between the other two for me personally. And Era 1 is my first introduction really to Brandon Sanderson. I've read, I think it's called Origin, which he co-authored, which I can't remember the other author right now. And that was actually really more of like an audio experience, I think they called it on Audible. I read that a while ago. It's really short, maybe 2 hours long. And I have also read The Wheel of Time, so I did read the last 3 books that he finished up. But that was a 4-star for me, so I did end up enjoying it. Then I went back to science fiction, but not The Expanse just yet. I went to Roadkill by Dennis E. Taylor. He is the author of the Bobbyverse series, so if you've read that, you might want to check out this one. They definitely have a similar tone. This follows a group of college-age kids and some aliens and world takeover. It definitely has that same Bobbyverse, charm and feel to it. Ray Porter does the audio for this as well. I think this is an Audible exclusive, but it definitely kind of has that same feel. So it's been a while since a Bobbyverse book came out, and if you want that itch scratch, this should definitely do it for you. Yeah, so let's see. Next, I stayed in the realm of science fiction, and I'm gonna say this wrong, but it was book 7 of The Expanse, Persepolis Rising. I think I got that actually. I did give this 4-star, and this was a contentious book for me. So the first 75% of this book I did not really like. I just wasn't clicking with me. I just couldn't get into it. There was just something missing. I had just lost something for me. But the last quarter, 30% of this book, it got back into what I think is some of the best writing in The Expanse so far. I loved it. And so that's what actually kept it being a 4-star for me. That last 25% was enough to keep this high up in my rankings. I'm really glad. I was worried that I might not like how the series ends, and I was worried because I'm this far into a series, I'm not going to DNF it. I'm going to see it through. I've read, all the novellas and everything, so I was really committed. And so with the way this book ended, it makes me really hopeful for the future books. I think there's just 2 left and maybe 1 more novella. I'll have to double check, but it makes me really happy. I'm getting some elements back that I was missing. I don't want to say too much. This is super late into a series, so I don't want to spoil anything for anyone, but some things that I felt like were missing for 3 or 4 books are back, and I'm really happy about that. Now, for what is probably my least favorite book of the month and my least favorite of a series, it is For Your Eyes Only by Ian Fleming, which is book 8 of the James Bond, and it's really a collection of short stories. It's not just one long story, which is what I like. I don't want 4 45-minute long or something like, I think maybe an hour and a half for some of the stories in there, but they just didn't give me enough. I like when we kind of get that slow build of like figuring out the villain, who they're working with, what their motives are, and then the takedown. I mean, they're all very formulaic, but this one just kind of missed the mark for me a little bit. So I did give this one 3 stars. Probably my least favorite in the series. I'm hoping that with book 9, which I think is Thunderball, we get kind of back on track. It's a full-length novel, so I think I'll probably end up enjoying that one more. And another novella, back to The Expanse. This one, once again being a novella, I ended up giving it 3 stars. And it is Abernon, I believe is how it was pronounced. And, like I said, this is part of The Expanse. This is actually probably my favorite Expanse novella. Once again, you're really just kind of seeing the ripple effects of what's happening in the main series and how that is changing things in other parts that we're not seeing in the main series. So definitely, I think the novellas are worth it, and you should read them if you're interested in the Expanse world. I think you can get them all in one big book, and so I made the mistake on Audible of buying each individual book when I think they have the one that contains all of them. So don't make the same mistake I did if you're an audiobook listener. Make sure you get just the big collection. I think you can just go through it that way instead of wasting money on a bunch of different stories. Then to my penultimate book before I went back to fantasy, I read Run by Blake Crouch. This is a super fast-paced book with a good mystery in it. I like the twists that it had in it. And it's really about suffering and family and love, definitely suffering. Chaos is the main thread through this book. There's just so much chaos and sadness and suffering and just suffering. I'm going to say suffering 100 times because it is suffering over and over again. I really had the Road and Purge vibes when reading this book. It's a family trying to escape groups of crazed killers. And so you definitely have the suffering aspect from the Road that happens in that, and then the murderous rampage that happens in the Purge. So if you like those kinds of things, check this one out. It's really short. I don't think it's not very long. I read it on Kindle, so I'm not 100% sure how long it is page-wise, but it is really short, fast-paced. I got through this in a day and a half, maybe. So yeah, definitely recommend. And then I alluded to this earlier, but my last book of the month was The Hero of Ages by Brando Sando, the final book of the Mistborn trilogy. I gave this one 4 stars as well. And yeah, I thought it was a great end to the trilogy. You got some answers to questions, really filled in the world. You really got to see the seeds that were planted throughout the series come to fruition here. Things that once you read it and you think back about the books, I had the luxury of reading these all so close that they were pretty fresh in my mind. But all the things that you learn and then look back on and see, oh, that makes so much sense now. It was great. Right now, I do have it below The Final Empire as my favorite book. Awkward cut right there. I wanted to add something that I forgot about the video, so I'm going to add this in at the end. I wanted to talk about the manga that I am currently reading. I'm currently caught up on a couple of different series, so I'm week to week on those, and those are My Hero Academia, Black Clover, Vinland Saga, I think that's actually monthly, not weekly, Berserk, which we all know that has an interesting timeline on its release, especially after the passing of the author. And then also Boruto. And if you are a fan of Naruto/Boruto, I'm sure you have some very strong opinions on the series, and I would love to hear those down in the comments. I know I definitely have some thoughts about that. And I am also 105 chapters into One Piece. It took me a little bit to really kind of get into One Piece. I'm not sure why. I have a lot of friends who are really into it. I know it's beloved. But it kind of took me about to this point to be like, yeah, this is going to be a series for me. I think I'm really going to like it. And I know I'm so behind, and there's like 1,000 chapters I still have to get to be caught up. But I'm going to enjoy that ride. And I am also reading along with the Philip Chase, Murphy Napier vlogs of Vagabond. So I've really enjoyed that series. I think I just finished up volume 9 for this week. And the next couple volumes will be they do 3 at a time, so 10, 11, and 12. I've really enjoyed this series. I think it has a lot of potential. I know it's on hiatus too, which is always a little sad, but I think there's like 300 or so more chapters to get through, and I really think that the story is going to be something amazing. If you haven't watched those videos that are on Philip Chase's and Murphy Napier's second channel, you really should. They're awesome. They really help unpack some of the stuff that is going on in the series that I had missed when I was reading it myself. So it's nice to have that kind of discussion to look at. And I just wanted to mention my book of the month, which this month is really easy to see because I only had one 5-star, and that is Boy's Life by Robert McCannon. This is a great book, really loved it. If you are looking for that coming of age story of just like a 12-year-old boy experiencing life, I highly recommend it. I'll also add in the ranking of all the books that I read this month from best to worst. And that's all I have for the month of February. Let me know what you read this month, and have a good one.